Hello, everyone, and happy Canada Day from all of us at Amica Senior Lifestyles. I'm Anthony, one of the Community Relations Directors at Amica Aspen Woods in Calgary, tucked next to the Rocky Mountains. Our other host this afternoon is my talented colleague Julia from Amica Westboro Park on the banks of the Ottawa River. Welcome to our sixth national virtual event. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a very special program lined up for you as we celebrate the 153rd anniversary of our wonderful country. We have over 200 attendees here today. Because we are such a large crowd, our production team has turned off your sound and video. Also, our presenters will be speaking from their own homes or office out of an abundance of caution for COVID-19. You might hear pets, children, or other noises which might be out of the speaker's control. We'd ask for your very Canadian patience and understanding. After our two speakers, Julia will host a short Q&A with our panelists. I am extremely pleased to introduce our first expert today. Jesse Lumsden is a Canadian Olympic bobsledder and former CFL player. Jesse's football career really launched with a standout career at McMaster before being drafted in the NFL. After returning to Canada, Jesse followed in his father Neil Lumsden's footsteps, and he went on to a career with the CFL. He started in Hamilton, then to Edmonton, before wrapping up his time in the CFL with the Calgary Stampeders. Next up, Jesse took up on the Olympics as a bobsledder, participating in the Vancouver, Sochi, and Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. Since stepping away from sport, Jesse has taken on a new challenge, building Neo Financial, a new technology company here in Calgary. When not working on Neo, Jesse has been enjoying time at home with his wife Helen and two kids, Florence and Rowan, planning their next adventure. We are so thrilled to have him here with us today to talk about facing change and overcoming adversity. Our warmest welcome, Jesse.
Thank you, Anthony. Appreciate the warm introduction. I am so excited to be here today at my house to chat with you all who may or may not actually exist. This is a very strange thing for me. I've been able to do one Zoom presentation or digital or whatever video conference presentation before, and it is different from a presenter standpoint. And part of that, for me personally speaking, is because I generally feed off of an audience. So now I'm just talking into my computer, and thankfully I did warn my family that I'm going to be doing this, so they don't think that I'm actually just going a little bit crazy. Now, as we do say in Calgary, this isn't my first rodeo. I did get the opportunity to speak at Amica prior to the 2018 Olympic Games, and really the focus of that talk was filling up your toolbox and putting things in your toolbox that are going to help you accomplish your goals. A couple of those things I'm going to chat and revisit today. As you can see from the title of the screen and the brief points that I will be touching on, I have fittingly named this presentation Lessons from a Loser, because I did not win a medal in 2018. And so it is fitting. I did have wins along my way in my career, and I'm very proud of those. But you can learn a lot from a loser, especially if you take the time to sit back and think about it. So I may be a loser, but I'm not a failure. And I'll touch on that a little bit. I look back at my 16-year career as a professional football player and as an Olympic bobsledder, and I feel very, very proud of myself, of not only how I carried myself as an athlete, how I prepared for every competition. I stood on the block for every race, knowing that I've done everything I possibly can, and I just needed to let everything go and actually race to that point. And how I prepared and carried myself also as a competitor. So today, it is a bit of a different, because generally I speak about what I've done as an athlete to prepare and those tools, but we're going to really focus on something specific. I'm going to share with you some of the principles that really have helped guide me through my own adversity and my own struggles. And anybody who is an athlete who plays and gets to participate in something for as long as I did is going to face those things at some point or another. The good thing is that utilizing these principles and going through these states of uncertainty and going through these times of adversity allowed me to become better, a better person, more resilient, and in many ways more dangerous as a competitor. So, before I do dive too deep into this, I am a goal-oriented person. A lot of people are. So the unique thing about being an Olympic athlete is you actually stand up in front of your entire country and you state your goal. You put yourself in a very vulnerable position. And I'm going to do the same thing today. I'm going to tell you what my goal is. And looking at the numbers, we're getting close to 100 people. So my goal today is to have something that I share with the group stick with 20% of you. If I am able to accomplish that, and you can actually provide me with some feedback with the chat, which I might actually click into it a little bit later on. If something sticks with you, then I've done my job. If I hit 50%, well, I'll be even happier. I'm overachieving. And if I hit 80 or 100%, well, I need to charge more, and I need to really make this a full-time gig. But the large portion of my adult life, and as we get into this now, a lot of the things that I cared about most were out of my control. Team sports, outcomes, results, coaches' decisions, bad teammates, bad decision-making on my part, and sometimes that is in your control. You don't realize it until you're in the moment of it. But understanding that there's going to be many things that are out of your control is the first step in actually being prepared how to handle those situations. So when Anthony reached out and we got to talking, and he kind of laid out what we wanted to discuss today. And really, it was about overcoming inertia and how to stay positive during times of adversity. Well, the first thing I had to do was actually go back and look up what the definition of inertia was. So after doing that, I realized, well, this is right up my alley, so this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to modify some things and change some things, but I really feel like I can bring something to the table that's going to stick with you guys. So for those who don't know what the definition of inertia is, and there's really two definitions, and I'll touch on both, but the first one being a tendency to do nothing or remain unchanged. So when I started thinking about this definition of inertia, I wanted to understand what causes this to happen within people. Why do people do nothing? What puts us in this state of nothingness, of the inability to move forward? In the case of COVID-19, which we're all facing, there's really two things at play. There's a positive and a negative reason that has put us in this state of stillness. The positive, which we have widely adopted across Canada and has been wildly advertised, being a hero, stay home, has really been to the benefit of everybody so that we could flatten the curve and stop the spread of COVID, which is really interesting because that's actually fed into a negative component of inertia, of people feeling that sense of being stuck somewhere. The other aspect, that standalone negative aspect, which I really started to think about, and having spoken with my parents and other people as to how they've dealt with this, is and what puts them in a state of stillness is fear. Whether it's fear of failure, fear of the virus, fear of the unknown, fear of contributing to the problem, fear of potentially putting a loved one in a compromised position and them ending up in the hospital. But because we have these fears, it doesn't mean that we should stop pursuing excellence or pursuing goals. It just means we need to find a different way to do it, while we can still continue to be the hero and stay home and help flatten the curve. So I am going to get a bit philosophical. As you saw on that title screen, there was 3 quotes, and those are the 3 quotes that are really going to guide what I'm going to talk about. And I'm going to give you a bit of history of why I chose those 3 quotes. And over the last 5 years, the idea of Stoic philosophies and the works of people like, more modernly, Ryan Holiday, but Marcus Aurelius and Seneca and Epictetus have really resonated with me because of what I have gone through as an athlete and the trials and tribulations that I have faced, being cut from 3 different professional teams, facing countless, injuries, which really ended a big part of the reason that ended my football career. Media outlets constantly doubting my ability to play football and really impacting me in a negative way. Missing out on a medal by 0.7 of a second in my first Olympic Games, walking into the opening ceremonies during a cancer scare that I kept to myself and my close family that nobody else knew about. crashing in the 2014 Sochi Olympics in the silver medal position. So all of these things throughout my life have been what I've now come to realize is stepping stones to how I've handled situations, how I've handled problems. So a quick history lesson, because why not, on the idea of Stoicism. The start of Stoic philosophy actually came from a dye merchant named Zeno back in ancient Greece. He was on his way on a merchant voyage, and he was shipwrecked. He survived, but lost everything. When he did come back to Athens, he found himself in a sitting and a reading, and the reading was really about Socrates and his philosophical beliefs, which guided him to want to learn more about the different forms of philosophies, which he then, at that reading, met soon to be what was going to soon be his mentor, Crates. And Crates was a Cynic philosopher. And it was through the learnings of Crates that Zeno then developed this form of Stoic philosophy. Many people practice and continue to practice Stoicism in their daily lives. And the great thing about Stoicism is that it is not meant to be deliberated or debated on. It's not meant to be put into solving theoretical problems. It's meant to be put into action by everyday people. And it really has helped millions of people. And there's countless leaders and titans of industry, men and women around the world that have utilized the principles and the virtues of Stoicism to help them, whether it's get back up, get on the horse again, find their way through problems, become a better person. So that's the one thing I really do like about this, and that's really hit home for me, is it's meant to be put into action. It's meant to help you become a better father, a better teammate, a better person, a better colleague, a better athlete, whatever it might be. These principles allow you to continue to progress forward, essentially. So you saw a couple quotes from Marcus Aurelius, and what really fascinates me about Marcus Aurelius is he was arguably the most powerful person in the world when he was the emperor of Rome. And when he led Rome, he was faced with constant adversity. He ruled during a time of constant battle and warfare. He also ruled during a pandemic, a global pandemic, the Antonine Plague, which killed millions of people, and ultimately also was the demise of Marcus Aurelius. But once you start reading Marcus Aurelius's work, and really it is focused on something called Meditations. And Meditations was never meant to be published. It was his personal journal. And as you go through this, you start to realize that the most powerful man in the world used this as a tool to become a better person. He reflected on the Stoic principles to allow him to see through problems. He shows, obviously, because it is his journal, his vulnerability, his insecurities as a man and as a leader, but he's used it and used these principles to help him become better, a better leader, a better husband, a better father. And it helped remind me that history truly does repeat itself. There have been people with less that have been able to get through and continue to push forward and to accomplish goals and to make the world, a bit better for them and for around them. And, when we can look back at these things and look back at these words, and if they can help us continue to move forward, maybe get a bit less stuck where we are and to continue to face adversity and try to find some positivity in it, then we need to be able to learn how to apply it. So jumping into my first quote as I showcased there is, of course, a Marcus Aurelius quote. I am a big fan. And really one of the guiding principles that helped me through, again, my career is the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. You're walking down a pathway and all of a sudden there's a wall put in front of you. It's something that we're all going to face. Hurdles are going to come in all different sizes and all different, scenarios, and you never know what's going to, actually be put in front of you. But the idea behind this quote is that it's not to let you know that hurdle is going to be there, but it's letting you know that this is an opportunity to practice excellence. This is an opportunity to figure out a way that you can better yourself. You can strategize and you can figure out a new way, that impediment is going to become the way so that you can continue to move forward. And I think that's something we are all facing right now. from whether it's a work-life balance or just our daily lives being in a very unique position, having been quarantined at home for so long, and understanding that, you know, these impediments are here, but it doesn't mean that we have to be stuck. We can continue to pursue excellence. Now, from the athlete perspective, it would be easy to work towards becoming an Olympic champion or being the best football player in the world in a perfect training environment, in conditions that make you feel comfortable, in a bit of a bubble wrap situation, if you know what I mean. But the problem is, and athletes strive for this, they want that perfect environment. This is a very dangerous way to prepare yourself for life, because this isn't life. Like I said, speed bumps, hurdles, illness, competition, road rage, bad teammates, bad weather, bad coaching decisions. This is where this quote hits home. This is what is going to allow and help you prepare to face all of these things that are necessarily not necessarily in your control, but that are also it's also going to allow you to continue with your forward progress. This is where we ultimately need to continue to practice excellence. At the same time, when you continue to practice this excellence and work towards getting through these impediments, what happens is you build resiliency. And resiliency is an attribute that we see in some of the greatest people that we'll ever meet. The unfortunate thing about resiliency is that you're not born with resiliency. It is earned. And it's earned through facing adversity. It's earned through hardships. It's earned through going through battles. It's earned by falling down 6 times and getting up 7 times. But this is what builds these people up so they can continue to face everything. Ray Dalio, who's an author and one of probably the largest hedge fund manager, I think, in the world at this point, kind of breaks this down into a very simple formula. Pain plus reflection equals progress. The nice thing about this is if you can take this into your personal lives and look at it for what it is, which is a formula to follow, it will help. The unfortunate thing is most people, when they're faced with that first part of that formula, pain, can't get past that. They get stuck. Pain becomes a shackle attached to a ball that doesn't allow them to even see past the opportunity to reflect on something to get better. Now, this is something, again, throughout my career, I faced constantly. And fortunately, one thing that I've always had around me was a great support system. And I encourage you to do the same. Whenever you're faced with an impediment, whenever you're faced with adversity, and you start to go through this process to figure out this formula, you don't have to do it alone. Having a support system is going to make you solve this formula easier. If you look at it from a time loop, the first time you go through this formula, it's a big circle. When you look at time as that circle, you're going to face pain, you're going to get to the bottom, and now you're going to reflect on that pain, and it's going to take you time to get back up so you can be back on that forward progress. The nice thing is that once you've gone through that once you've gone through that 2 or 3 times, that circle tightens, that timeline tightens, and you're actually able to go through these steps more and more quickly because, again, the impediment to action advances action. So if you continue to remember that the most important thing is that if you get knocked down 6 times, that you have to get up 7. You also can't just experience this through my words or through reading it or through seeing it at other people. Pain is something that we need to experience to understand how we can utilize reflection to overcome that. It is the unfortunate reality of building resiliency that we need to face adversity, figure it out so that we can continue with forward progress. The second quote I'm actually going to bypass because it is actually more relevant to and works really great in an audience full of people and because it comes with an exercise. And it really is more about, from my standpoint, something that was important to me in my preparation to becoming an Olympic champion, which obviously never happened because, lessons from a loser, kind of figured that out. But Epictetus, another Stoic philosopher, said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought, foolish, and stupid. If you want to improve, be content to be thought, foolish, and stupid. This is really interesting because anybody who wants to achieve something, whether it's a small goal or a big goal, when you're doing it for the first time, you're going to fall on your face. So that's what Epictetus is about. in this situation. And now my little exercise, which I encourage you to do with other people, I will be the demonstration. I'll be the subject matter. But it's really about understanding what you need to stretch yourself. Okay, so in a group, a room full of 200 people, I get everybody to raise their hand as high as they can. I ask everybody, can you please raise your hand as high as they can? Everybody raises their hand. And then I wait a couple seconds and I keep them there, because holding your arm up in the air isn't the most comfortable position to be in. I then asked the room to please raise your hand as high as you can. And the whole room, every single time I've done this, is able to raise their hand higher. Okay? So the first time I've asked them to do something to the maximum amount of what they think that they can do. I asked them to do it a second time, and they're actually able to raise their hand higher. They're now stretching themselves beyond what they thought they could do. There's a couple reasons for this. One, people don't want to look foolish and stupid. Two, it's uncomfortable. We're starting to sit in an uncomfortable position. The last thing I do is I get everybody to close their eyes. And I ask them to raise their hand as high as you possibly can. And I would say 90% of the room is able to raise their hand a little bit higher. And then I ask them to hold it there for a second. If you're in the pursuit, on the purposeful pursuit of excellence, which is something that is always I have thought about whenever I go into the gym when I train, understanding that going to the gym is not going to be enough. Training doesn't start till you're uncomfortable. This is where growth happens. If you want to accomplish a goal, you're going to have to be uncomfortable. And you're probably going to look a little foolish along the way. But if you're willing to stretch yourself, and you know you can, and continue to push yourself, it's going to be worth it in the end. Even if you don't accomplish your goal, even if you don't get to stand on the podium of the Olympics and sing the national anthem, you have learned that you can go a little bit further. So a little takeaway, unfortunately, it doesn't really work in the environment, but I'll bring it back to Epictetus again, because, again, we're sticking with that Stoicism philosophy. We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. A coach told me once, a long time ago, that, and this was a rule in the locker room, after a loss, and when I played in Hamilton, we lost a lot, you have 24 hours to feel sorry for yourself. So we had 24 hours to lick our wounds before we got to come back and start working towards our next opponent. The reason being is that if you're stuck in inertia, feeling sorry for yourself, you're never going to progress forward. A year ago, I don't think anybody expected where we are today. Told not to go to work, told to stay home, told to close your business, told you can't serve customers, you can't travel, you can't go to the gym, you have to stop hugging people, you can't see your parents. This is a very unique position that I certainly have never experienced before. Something that has impacted the globe, everybody on the globe, in a way that very few, especially in North America, have experienced. So now we're forced to being stuck. We're not able to continue to work in our businesses, to serve our customers, to help our people, to see our family. We have to figure out what to do next. And again, it's easy to get stuck. It's easy to get stuck in the mud and not to continue to move forward. We have an impediment in front of us, but it's how we respond. It is always our choice on how we respond to situations. Do you choose to stay stuck? Do you choose to have that anklet attached to a ball and chain to prevent you from going forward? Or are you going to choose to find a different way to continue to practice excellence? And I'm getting pretty close to time, so I'm going to blow through this pretty quickly. The last quote that I wanted to share, again, going back to my man Marcus here, is this is really all about just life in general. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. We're in, a very unique position where we are being told to stay home, told to change the way we live, told not to hug the people that we love, told not to go out and eat at our favorite restaurants and go travel to our favorite places. It's easy to get down. It's easy to be negative. Our minds can be our greatest ally and our greatest enemy. Understanding this has allowed me to become better at what I'm doing. The understanding that negative thoughts are going to come into play, but I can respond to those. I am in control of those no matter what. No matter what happens to my body, I'm always in control of my mind and my thoughts. And although they may be negative at some times, I have the ability to turn around and to change that perspective. If I can change that perspective and that quality of thought, it's going to allow me to get up back on my feet. It's going to allow me to get up that seventh time after falling six times. Laura Ingalls Wilder, obviously a Little House on the Prairie author and a pioneer, was quoted as saying, there is good in everything if only you look for it. One thing I found very interesting during this pandemic is how people have pivoted their goals and they're really putting themselves out there through social media platforms, which is great because it gives you a sense of accountability that, again, you're putting yourself in a vulnerable situation of trying to accomplish physical and health related goals, doing things differently, working towards still running a marathon, but going out and finding a treadmill, watching an Italian guy run an entire marathon on his balcony. There's all these examples of wonderful things happening because people are changing the way they think. And the quality of those thoughts, even though we are stuck in this pandemic, are still positive. So whether it was an injury, 3 shoulder surgeries, a knee reconstruction, being cut by professional teams like the Seahawks, the Redskins, and the Eskimos, walking into the 2010 Olympic ceremonies during a cancer scare that I chose to keep to myself, coming in 5th place in my first Olympics and losing out on a bronze medal by 0.07 seconds, crashing in my second Olympics, sitting in the silver medal position. There's always an opportunity to learn. There's always an opportunity to practice excellence, respond appropriately, find the positive so you can continue to move forward. And before I end here, I came across an article that I found really interesting, and I'm sticking with the principle of keeping something in history and bringing it today and utilizing it in today's situation. So another philosopher, Plutarch, who was a Platonist philosopher, which I really know nothing about, and he was a writer and also a priest in ancient Greece, wrote a lot about the Spartan soldiers. And the Spartan soldiers were a very interesting community of people, lived very, very hard lives, and very few people messed with the Spartans. Even the largest empires in the world always left the Spartans alone. But the Spartan soldiers would actually punish the soldiers by death if they ever dropped their shields. They were free to take off their helmet and their chest plate whenever they wanted, because those protected the individual. But that the way that the Spartans battled and the strategic positioning of how they used the collective in warfare times and in battle, the shield was meant to protect the line. So what happens is if you drop the shield, you made the line vulnerable. You made your whole platoon or army vulnerable to attack, and that was punished by death. Stephen Pressfield, a writer, recently wrote an article discussing the comparison of what the Spartans did and what we are facing today. You guys are all working in a position where you're working with some, with compromised people, with people who can't afford, to catch this virus because the implications are so far greater. So I look at myself and I put myself in the position of the Spartans and the younger people out there. And my shield is now a face mask. My shield is social distancing. I am wearing my face mask and my family is wearing their face masks to protect the vulnerable, to protect the line. And I hope we continue to spread the word about this, that it isn't about me. It's about everybody else. It's about my family members. It's about my parents and my parents-in-law. It's about my grandparents. It's about my grandmother in St. Catharines, who's 97 years old. I hope that people really do understand that wearing our shields is protecting the line. It's protecting the people around us. And if we can continue to do that, we will continue to beat this and we will continue to flatten the curve. So thank you very much for having me today. Like I said at the beginning, we're at just about 100 people, so 20%, 20 people. If I had said something that hopefully sticks with 20 of you, I feel like I've done my job. If you ever do find yourself in a state of inertia, a state of feeling stuck, really look to find that external force. When you look at that second definition, which is more around physics, that external force that is going to help move you out of that place of stillness, back onto the path forward, back towards working towards your goals, and really continuing with your forward progress and hopefully getting closer and closer to accomplishing your goals. Really, thank you very much for having me in my house. talking to you, talking to my computer, and I look forward to the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Jesse. We look forward to having you back at the question and answer period. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Andrea Prashad. Andrea joined Amica Senior Lifestyles in 2014. In her current role of Vice President Resident Experience, she oversees a national advisory team encompassing wellness, culinary, life enrichment, memory care, and regulatory affairs. Andrea brings leadership to quality improvement for Amica by overseeing the operations analytics team to advance the resident experience. She is also an elected board member on the Ontario Retirement Communities Association's Board of Directors, where she chairs the Governance Committee and Public Affairs Advisory Group. Andrea has over a decade of experience working across the field of quality improvement and risk mitigation in nonprofit, government, and private settings, primarily in the health system. Andrea has a passion for leading system change with the goal of enhancing integration, accountability, transparency, and satisfaction for operations across different service delivery streams. Andrea holds a law degree and a master's in public policy, administration, and law. Recently, she completed a certificate in risk management from Harvard University. Andrea resides in Toronto with her husband and daughters, Hudson, Wisla, and Charlie. Welcome, Andrea.
Hi, everyone. Happy Canada Day. I know this Canada Day, and quite frankly, every day right now looks a little bit different. I wish I was in person to be able to see each of your faces. However, I know right now virtual will have to do as we're doing our part to keep everyone safe. I'm pleased to talk about something that's really relevant to all of us, COVID. And I'd like to share a view of COVID from Amica, the senior housing sector, and in particular, what the early days of COVID looked like to us and how critical our learnings were. And also, I'll wrap up with talking about how we're living now. Hope that's okay. We'll keep moving. I think there's a Q&A period just at the end, so feel free if you have questions and comments. And I see you're using the chat box too. That's great. I'm going to kick off talking a little bit about leadership. And why I want to talk about leadership is because it became so very important in the early COVID days. There's a ton of literature on effective leadership skills, and I don't pretend to know them all nor practice them all, but I can say with confidence one area that can easily get overlooked in leadership skill sets is crisis management. And often this gets a little bit less attention because it's, underappreciated sometimes, it's overlooked, and often it's not even one of the top requirements in a workplace until that is a crisis hits. And this is certainly one of those times where a crisis is hit. The early COVID days, it kind of felt like we were a bit trapped in a video game. The ground is shifting around you and the rules and the plans are changing daily. We saw some organizations truly falling. And I'm not sure that each of you, I'm sure each of you did see that this was changing all around us. And we were frontline to the severity of COVID and what worst case could really look like. We were seeing all the numbers as you were seeing them playing out in the media as well around COVID's impact. And at the time in other parts of the world and in long-term care, and at Amica, we were determined just not to make that reality. And our job was we had a few jobs ahead of us. One was we had to survive the crisis. We had to navigate a path that required us to face the reality that we were in a pot of boiling water that could really overflow at any moment. In other words, we were seeing the COVID positive numbers growing at massive rates and disproportionately affecting the senior demographic, the residents we are serving. And we needed to ensure that what our boiling pot of water, that it certainly did not boil over. So we readied our teams to really run a big race. And this race, it's still continuing. And I'm not going to minimize how it felt in the early days of COVID. It did feel like for our teams and our residents, it did feel like a race of a lifetime when we were seeing the headlines worldwide. I'm amazed and continue to be at the creative tenacity, though, that I saw across Amica in serving our seniors. As I think about the discussions our teams have had over the past couple months, there's a few big takeaways that I'd love to be able to share with you. First, Amica's investment in a solid infrastructure prior to COVID, it created a really solid and strong advantage for us. So we have this incredible team, a solid foundation of operations, and this meant that we could advance and move on our pandemic plan at lightning speed. And this brings me to my next point. Rapid response, rapid problem solving, it proved to be key. Crisis management demands decisions are made at warp speed. I think COVID has made every organization aware of the limits of its ability to quickly learn in an extremely fast-moving environment in which we don't have a day of hesitation. We did not, in the early days of COVID, have a day that we could have hesitation. Because if we did, we could lead to quadrupling, and certainly I'm not exaggerating, quadrupling of infections. And we had to make sure that we kept our residents not only safe, but we wanted to have as little disruption to their well-being as possible. And at times that felt a little bit less realistic and thought we weren't sure exactly how we were going to do that. But we simply had to run. We could not overthink the decisions that we were making because hesitation, we did not have the luxury of hesitation. Lastly, and while survival was certainly top of mind in the early days, really managing through the early COVID days, thriving is the long game. And this requires us to respond to a new environment, a new senior, a new team member, and really new heightened societal expectations in order to lead the way out of this adversity. We have accepted that there's no going back to pre-COVID days. And I say that because even when we have hopeful of vaccination, even if we have treatments and therapies that drastically reduce mortality, even if we have herd immunity, we know so much now. Society is simply going to expect that much more just in traditional public health methods, and they should. So in a nutshell, while managing wave 1 of COVID, we had to build the stability fast for living with COVID. And also, we've had to ready ourselves for a potential wave 2. This is really our go-forward strategy and living in our new normal. What else would I like to share with you? I want to share a few things that I'm really proud about at Amica. We readied ourselves for the worst case scenario. We readied ourselves for ground zero based on how we were seeing disproportional impact on the sector that we're serving. I'm so happy to say and so proud to say that these were not our own realities at Amica. In fact, I'm even prouder to say right now, we're COVID free. That means we do not have one positive resident, we do not have one positive team member across the whole country in which we operate. So proud of that. Even in the worst days, in the early days of COVID, when we were racing, our reality was so much better than most. I'll give you a few interesting data points. So as I sit here today and I look back on the early COVID days, less than 10% of our total residents tested positive for COVID. And this is in spite of the fact that we do mass testing. We test all our residents, we test all of our team members. So even we've had a very aggressive case finding process. We've learned that our lines of defenses, they worked really well. And in fact, our residents became the safest place for our seniors to be. This is a bold statement, and I feel really confident making this statement, and I feel confident making it for a variety of reasons, but I really want to share 3 with you. One is our infection rate is so low, even with mass testing, and I'll say that several times because we've been super aggressive with it. Second is our enhanced infection prevention protocols, they're so strong. I feel so good about this that I not only have family living in our residences, I have family working in our residences. It's a bold statement that I stand behind. Third is we are championing the pillars of congregate living. So to put it another way, we had residents and families tell us how happy that they are that their loved one is not alone, especially now. This presentation is not about isolation, but I can't help myself but talk about it. Isolation is, to many, it's worse than smoking when you think about the overall health impacts. I'm so glad that the residents at Amica are not alone. COVID will continue to stay top of mind for us, especially for our seniors. I think I have to take a moment just to say that, my heart goes out to all those who have been affected. And it's important to know that at the beginning and throughout the pandemic, the retirement home sector we took quick action to protect residents and staff. And I want to highlight, because I know we've had a few questions around what's the protocols that retirement homes have put in place. So I'll highlight a few. One is active and regular screening of all staff, residents, and visitors. This means when you come into our buildings, they look a little bit different and you're going to get asked some questions. You're going to get your temperature certainly taken. Ensuring appropriate access to PPE, personal protective equipment, and masking. That'll certainly look different. Enhanced cleaning, disinfecting protocols, no-brainer. Interesting too, we've made sure that our staff only work at one location. This is great for contact mapping in the event that we do have a positive case. We manage essential visitors and we restrict non-essential visitors. We want to do everything we can to keep a really solid iron ring in our residences and to make sure people feel safe. And we feel confident that we've done that. We've adapted our services to support physical distancing in our residences. And we've continued with testing. So not only mass testing, so it's not about just testing everyone once and okay, this is great. It's about interval, ongoing testing, both for our staff and also for even our visitors coming in the building. I'll share some Ontario numbers. So, and I'm using Ontario just because we've been worse hit than Alberta and British Columbia, where some of you might be right now. So in Ontario, there's 771 licensed retirement homes across the province. And as I sit here today, 99% are free of any outbreaks of COVID. 99%, no COVID. And to put this another way, since the pandemic began, so confirmed cases in Ontario retirement homes, so this is residents and staff, they represented only 4% of all cases in the province. I want to say this again because it's worth repeating is, at Amica, we feel confident in saying that, if we have an outbreak, it can be very quickly controlled. I think our strong outcomes in minimizing transmission reflect really our outcomes. We had low infection rates. And as I sit here today, we have none. I think it's, we moved to pandemic levels. We're figuring out how to right size things as we work through our residents right now. And I think our key lesson in this, and probably why some of our outcomes worked out so well, is we acted fast. Simply because supporting residents, it's our highest responsibility. It's our highest responsibility at Amica. Shifting gears, just as I wrap up, I want to optimistically talk to you a little bit about some research that we're doing. I appreciate that there are countless, encouraging movements happening across the country and the world to help stop COVID. At Amica, we are aggressively investing in innovation and clinical trials and helping to manufacture capacity. So as an example, you'll see on the screen here, we are partnering with academic institutions and hospitals in two areas. So one is a COVID prevention trial. This is specifically supporting the research of drugs that are having positive outcomes in laboratory results to prevent the infection of COVID. We are actually entering human trials here. Second is we're funding a COVID treatment trial. This is a national trial that involves 60 hospitals that have set up plasma treatment centers. So basically, we pull plasma from previous COVID positive people and inject the plasma into individuals that are COVID positive. To wrap up, our new norms have taught us that physical distancing is every bit as much an act of caring as a loving embrace. We've learned that wearing a mask serves as a visible sign that we're all in this together, and that as one, we will do whatever it takes to weather the storm and keep each other safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Andrea, and welcome back to Jessie. We have a few questions for you both that were sent in ahead of time. For those watching, if you missed the opportunity to send in your questions, please do use the chat box on your screen to submit your queries. And we'll do our best to answer, provided enough time remains. So Jessie, Anne from Toronto writes, how did you manage to stay positive through the trials of your professional sports career?
That's a good question. And it's definitely something that, again, learning, it takes falling down a few times to understand that there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel, that there are positives and silver linings in everything that happens and negatives that happen, opportunities to get better. So it took practice. It's like I said before, when pain hits you for the first time, it's hard to see anything but pain. It's hard to see through it. It's like a heavy, heavy fog that sits in front of you, and it weighs down on you. So learning that the fog will lift and that you are going to be able to see ahead allows for that to happen. And also just, from the science of it, having a positive attitude allows you to cognitively see through problems more quickly. It allows you to physically allows your body to heal more quickly. And often we hear like comedy is the best form of medicine. There is proof that being able to stay positive and laugh does have physiological effects on the body. So, using a bit of science and a little bit of experimentation has been a big part of how I've been able to stay positive during those times.
Absolutely. Andrea, Conrad from Ottawa asks, are Amica retirement residences ready for a potential second wave?
Good question. Certainly expected to get a question around a potential wave 2, potentially wave 3. Right now one person said this to me and I thought this fit well, is that there's nothing in the air that has made COVID go away right now. It's simply that we have to live with it right now. So until there's treatments, therapies that are reducing mortality, herd immunity, vaccinations, we're all doing our part. At Amica, I feel confident in saying that we can face a wave 2. And I know that our outcomes will be, even if we had outcomes of wave 1, we'll have stronger outcomes for wave 2 just because we're more prepared this time around. I think also our teams, they're more experienced. And they feel more confident because our lines of defense, they worked. I feel very good about that. Thank you.
Great. Jesse, Jose from Calgary would love to know, how do we prepare for such an uncertain future?
I think understanding that uncertainty is in front of us at all times is a good way to start to how to prepare for it. You never really know what the wall is going to be in front of you till it is in front of you, unless you can really good at forecasting situations and you're putting yourself in situations. But something like this is all you can really do is try to understand how you're going to get through something like this and build out a plan to allow you, once it does happen, to attack it appropriately. That 24-hour rule has always been something that has helped me, whether it's anything, quite bad from a professional level. Just, it's okay to feel bad and sad and frustrated and mad. These are all emotions, human emotions that we experience, and it's not about suppressing them or pushing them down. You need to experience that, but then it's about how do we continue to move forward. So understanding that there are going to be more and more hurdles, no matter what, no matter where you are on the planet, things are going to happen. That's always the first step.
Great, thank you. Andrea, Joan from Victoria asks, what is the difference between long-term care and senior lifestyle residences?
We get asked that question a lot. Are you the same thing as a long-term care? Put it a different way. Long-term care homes, they're funded by the government. Retirement homes are private residences, not funded by the government. Typically, in long-term care homes, you have much higher acuity. In retirement homes, you have all different kinds of neighborhoods. The different types of people living there, from independent, assisted living, memory care. You see specialized homes, you see neighborhoods all living in the same building together. So lots of different options.
Great, thank you so much. Jesse, Ruth from Windsor asks, in your opinion, what's the best way to manage extreme transitions in our life?
That's a good question. What's the best way to manage extreme transition? First, understanding that a transition needs to be made. So accepting it is a big part of it. And then small steps. It doesn't need to be these giant leaps and bounds to go through a transition. Understand how you deal with transition and how you can improve upon that. And then just start with baby steps. one thing at a time. It doesn't all have to be done at once, and just ensuring that you have something that you're going to be, when you do get through that transition, that you want to be at a certain place. If you have an end place that you want to be, it's always going to be easier to get there, as opposed to just wandering aimlessly through it.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you both so much for your time. And let's head back over to Anthony.
Wow, what a pleasure having you both here, sharing such wonderful insight with us. We can't thank you enough. And to everyone watching from home, thank you for joining us. It's our privilege to bring these programs to you and stay connected any way we can in these unprecedented times. I'm happy to share our next virtual event with you, Downsizing and Design, featuring Amica's own Claudia Salgado, Vice President of Design, talking about innovative design and wonderful ways to design spaces of all sizes. And downsizing expert Terry L. Brown will give us terrific ways to make the downsizing process less overwhelming. Keep an eye on your inbox for more details on that. Like Jesse and Andrea were talking about, Canadians are resilient, and we will come through this as strong as ever. Hopefully, after today, it'll help us look ahead to the future with anticipation rather than trepidation. Thank you again for joining us. All of our residences create delightful moments. As we say goodbye, enjoy this special Canada Day video from Amica Aspen Woods. We look forward to sharing more great moments as our national events continue. Until next time, stay safe and stay connected.
Being a Canadian to me means the privilege of freedom, the responsibility to embrace equality, and also the obligation for all of us to do our part in ensuring that every individual counts.
Being a Canadian to me means that I have freedom of speech and the right to vote.
Being Canadian is equal parts determination and optimism.
Being Canadian fills me with an intense feeling of sincere pride and complete joy, which is indescribable.
I'm very proud to be Canadian and most proud of the Canadian forces that liberated the Netherlands in 1945 so that my family could come to Canada and I could live in this wonderful country.